Today I'm going to show you some of the new features in Symphonix Evolution version 1.90. That's our latest version. To start with, the piano keyboard that you see here, we've added a few pad modes. So when you push the pad button, you'll see it now moves from piano to drum pad to full cymbal mode, and now to a new mode, which is a full 88 key piano keyboard, as well as the most common symbols up the top. And this is very useful when notating or transcribing scores, or when playing back music where you can see the full piano, which is useful if you're learning a new piece. Pad again gets you to the rhythm maker, and once more back to the main keyboard. Elsewhere on the screen you'll see we've rearranged the panel buttons up the top here. There's now a mute setting so that you can mute the current track while it is playing. And above that up the top there's an ARP button, which is the arpeggiator, which allows us to make some synthy electronic music sounds built into the app. Okay, other changes that you'll find, and we'll come back to those in a minute. In the settings, you'll see that that's now changed into a tab view. We now have panels for synth, where all of the settings for the synth playback, notation in a different tab. Two new functions, the MIDI tab, and this shows us all of the MIDI devices that we're able to use, as well as some other functionality around MIDI, and I'll just drill into that briefly for you. Soft MIDI through is used when you have a keyboard controller and you would like to route the input from that keyboard controller out to an external MIDI device. So it might be that you're playing on one keyboard and wanting the sound generated to happen on a different keyboard. Soft MIDI through will allow you to accomplish that. Disable audio in background. When that is off, which is the default setting, Symphonix Evolution will now continue to play back the sound if you switch out of the app and into another app. So you can start music playback and then keep going. Of course you can turn that off. This is useful if you want to use Symphonix Evolution as a MIDI controller for other apps. And you'll notice down the bottom here there's inputs and outputs, where we have virtual output and virtual input. And they're used to route the MIDI sound out of Symphonix, or the MIDI controller events out of Symphonix into other applications. And you can tick or untick those to determine whether they're used or not. When you are using it as a virtual MIDI controller, you'll see the MIDI clock settings and sync settings come into play. MIDI clock off means that Symphonix will keep its own tempo. Putting it onto master will mean that the clock signals will be generated when you play back a piece of music in Symphonix, which will then drive any other MIDI controller that's listening to those clock signals to make sure that they're in sync. Slave goes the other way, and that's where the tempo in Symphonix Evolution will be determined by clock signals coming from another MIDI device. In association with slave, sync start is used to start playback in time with an external device. What you do there is you put the clock onto slave, you turn on sync start, and then when you hit the play button to start a song, the system will actually stop and pause and wait for a MIDI start clock signal from another application or another device. When it receives that start message, then it will start playback, and it will be playing back in time with the other clock. Very useful if you're using Symphonix in conjunction with other applications. When it is listening as a virtual MIDI device, Omni mode, the default is turned on, which means that Symphonix will listen to all MIDI channels. If you just wanted to respond to a single channel, turn off Omni mode and then choose the channel that you would like it to respond to, and then from that point forward Symphonix will only listen to that channel and only from the input devices that you've ticked. So the MIDI tab, very, very useful when you're using it in a performing type arrangement. The next tab we have is the beginner tab, and it turns on a whole bunch of new features that are useful for people who are just learning or starting out in music. They start with simple things like highlighting the middle C on the piano keyboard, and it just draws middle C in a different colour so that it's easy to locate. Highlight keys being played means that notes sound are now highlighted in red as they play. Extremely useful. It makes it much easier to see what's going on. Showing note names on the piano keyboard. If I turn that on, you'll see that there's a panel across the keyboard that actually has the name of each note. Okay, and I should have mentioned when you highlight middle C, there it is there, highlighting in yellow. Highlight notes in current track only means that as a piece of music is playing, it'll now only show the notes in red for the track that you're currently on. So again, that makes it easy. You can see everything that's going on, but now you can see just the notes in your current track highlighted in a different colour. Show finger positions if known. Will actually draw on each key the finger number that you should use to play that key if you've put that information in. Unfortunately, it's pretty difficult to make the system automatically determine what that fingering should be. There's quite a bit of debate and quite a few mathematical formulas going around for that. We've chosen not to try because there's so many different variations that no two people can agree on the correct fingering for a piece of music. So instead we've made it so that a teacher could put that information in for a pupil and that way get the fingering that they need, and we'll cover that shortly. And finally, showing note names when adding to song. Now what that does, when you're dragging a note onto the score, it now shows the note name in a nice big writing there to the left of my finger, and it shows the note name as you drag it. So for a beginner, you can now see I've got the note highlighted on the staff, I've got the note name, and I've got the note highlighted in red on the keyboard, as well as the audible feedback, which makes it now very easy for a beginner to associate all of those things together and get comfortable with where a note is on the staff, what the note name is, how it sounds, and where it is on a piano keyboard. Okay, which makes it very useful in a learning, lesson-oriented situation. Okay, so there's some new functions there. The other major ones, I talked about fingering. Let's cover that very briefly. Let's say that I just put something very simple in. I'm just going to use the step time recorder. Okay, I put some notes in. Now I'd like to record the finger positions of those notes. What I can do is highlight a column of music in green, touch inside it, and you'll see a new menu pops up, and one of the options in that menu is fingers. Okay, I now enter fingering mode. This has got a lot of useful bits of information on it. So first of all, each note highlights in red over here and the column highlights in orange. You'll see as you highlight a column, the note is also drawn in yellow on the keyboard, and that will sound as I move. So as I change columns, you'll see the note that is in that column play. You can move through a whole piece of music in that way. It's like having a step playback mechanism where you've got total control over when the notes sound and what they are drawn on the keyboard. It makes it extremely easy to learn a piece of music even without doing the fingering positions that we're going to look at in a minute. You can also use these orange arrows to move back and forward through the song. And the next button, assuming you're starting at a particular note, next will move to the next note. First of all in the same column that you're in, and then proceed to the next column automatically. So it's a very quick way of going through the song note by note. And that's useful because when a note's highlighted, you can then touch the finger that you would like to play with that note. So if I want that to be the thumb, for example, push the thumb and you can see it's now drawn the finger number, it's drawn it on the hand, and now I can hit next, moves to the next finger, moves to the next finger, move to the next finger, and you'll now see that information's been saved So when I move back and forward, you'll see that it now draws that. So if I hit done and exit that mode, and now play back the song, you'll see the finger positions there were shown on the keyboard as it played. So for a beginner now, it's much easier to learn that song, and they can put it into fingering mode, work it through at their own pace using those next and previous buttons, or play the song at normal speed or at a reduced tempo and see the fingering positions. Very useful tool for learners. Okay, the other major feature that we've added in this release is the arpeggiator, and I'm going to show that. I'm going to put it into a pad mode. I think first of all a full keyboard, and I'm just going to select a synthy bass sound. Okay, that's much better. And now that I've got that, if I hit the ARP button, the arpeggiator options appear, and there's a lot of information here. I'll cover it very quickly. First of all, turning it on, obviously that's important. Hold and latch. When you play the notes on the keyboard, the arpeggiator is going to kick in. When you release the notes, if you want the arpeggiator to keep going, turn on the hold latch button. Very useful again in performance situation. The mode is the pattern that it uses when it plays, and you'll see there's quite a few different modes there, and they all revolve around whether it should take a manual mode, which is the keys in the order in which you originally play them, or just move up and down or up down in patterns, or from top to bottom or left to right. Lots of different arrangement and lots of different patterns there. The legato setting, normally when you use the arpeggiator, the notes are very distinct. It gives you a very techno-electronic sound. Turning the legato on will flow the notes together, and this may not be noticeable on all MIDI devices, but if you've got an appropriate instrument that supports portamento or legato aftertouch type settings, this can make some of those sounds come through, and it's very useful to experiment with. Swing determines your timing. If you want to have the arpeggiator work in standard time or in triplet time. Your note length, obviously, if you're looking at quarter notes, eighth notes, sixteenths, or 32nd notes. And octave span, which if it's on 0, which is the default, means that only the notes that you play are going to be used by the arpeggiator, but changing that number can make the sequence move up and down through the keyboard. So I've got that on, and just to show you what it does, I'm just going to put a couple of notes in. Okay, and you'll see that moved. If I change the order in which I play them, because I'm in manual mode, okay, you'll see that that changes things. If I go back in and turn on some octave settings, okay, you'll see it starts to span more of the keyboard. And of course I can use that with the rhythm generator. It synchronizes, so if I turn it on rhythm, I can put in a very simple drum beat, something like this, and hit play. Okay, and that's just going along. When I hit pad again, that continues to play, and now I can hit the arpeggiator. And you'll see it's all in time. Okay, I'll just turn that off. Okay, so that's the arpeggiator, and very useful when you've got a connected MIDI device. Makes it extremely useful to generate all sorts of techno beats and rhythms. Okay, so they're the major features in version 1.90.